Hi, hello. My name is Xiang Zi. I'm the director of A Dog Barking at the Moon. The Chinese name of the film is 再见南屏晚钟. It's great to be here, and thank you very much.
咱们之前不是已经说好了吗？不要去发表意见。可你为什么不听我的？为什么还是要去说？他认不认祖归宗，那人家二伯家的事情，跟我都没什么关系。你为什么非要去搭话？明明是人家家的事情，你又搞不清来龙去脉，干嘛非要去插嘴？
我说一句怎么了？怎么这么大男子主义啊？本来就是嘛。现在回来认祖归宗，早干什么来着？还不是因为拆迁回来分房拿钱吗？哎呀，你拽我干什么呀？我说一句怎么了？
分房拿钱，我们干涉得了吗？那是人家二伯家的事情，让咱们去，无非就是在一起吃顿饭。你说那些有的没的干什么？
我就说了，你拿我怎么样嘛？不让人发表意见了，真是心理变态。
行，你说我变态，那我今天就变态到底了，跟你永远也讲不清道理。今天咱们一家三口在一起，那就死了干净。
爸，你别生气，我妈就是那个脾气，你别放心上。
死了好啊，一起死，吓唬谁啊？
总是为了些不想干的人和事儿闹别扭，你们有完没完？为了别人活着，要不要蠢死？
你让他开呀，我就不信了，他还真有胆量去死。
金车，我要下车，要死你们去死，我还活着呢。金车，
哎呀，你怕他干什么呀？他还真能开到沟里去啊，就他那点胆儿。
Hello and welcome to the 33rd Teddy Awards. I'm Hannah Congdon and I'm here with director Xiang Zi to talk about her feature film, A Dog Barking at the Moon. Hi and welcome to the Berlinale.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
So I wanted to first of all ask about the opening scene of the film. So we've got the daughter having this C-section and the doctors are announcing that it's a girl. And the theme of gender is something that's very significant throughout the film, and in fact the daughter herself, it's the fact that is constantly almost chastised for the fact that she was born as the gender that she is. And I wondered if you could explain a little bit more about the role that gender plays in this society.
Oh, okay. This film is a story about the relation between the mother and the daughter. And in the beginning scene, then the daughter is going to have a daughter. And that's changed a little bit about her relationship with her mother, because she's going to have a new understanding of life, that now she's a mother and she has her own daughter. So I think it's a quite important scene in the beginning. And
But what about the fact that throughout the film, she's constantly being told, why were you born as a girl, and also that she seems to be blamed for the miscarriage that her mother had previously. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, in China, it's kind of like a few years ago, we still have the policy of the only child. And one family can only have one child in the city area if you are working for the government, or it's different in the rural area. You might be able to have 2 kids, but you are facing a fine. So now that is changing, but in the 90s, it's quite a big thing. A lot of family, they want to have boy because they want to pass the family name. So once you have a girl, you kind of okay, so what about passing the family name to the next generation? So a lot of girls are under pressure because their parents or their grandparents are blaming them or putting pressures, or we want to have a boy. So that's kind of depressing.
Yeah. And do you think that's then something that girls take on as they're growing up, that there's almost an innate feeling of inferiority as a result of that?
For example, I was born in 1987, and when I grow up, I constantly hear things like, because I was a good students. I always make like the top in the primary school, in the secondary school. And whenever we go to visit my grandma and my grandpa in the Chinese New Year, and all the relatives started talking about their kids, and my parents will say, oh, she made good grades this year. And then there were people say, well, it is easy for the girls to be doing good in primary school, but once they're like 12 or 13, they won't be as good as now, because you know the mathematics is going to be more difficult and the boys will do good. But when I was like 12 or 13, I still was the top student. Yeah. And then the same people will say, well, when she's in high school, she won't do as good as the boys, because the boys will be better and they will do more like good, how do I say it, academically they will make
better
grades
grades.
Better grades. And but throughout my life I always hear this, but I have a strong personality, so I was like, okay, I don't believe that. I will do good grade. It's not for you, and because I want to show you that boys and girls could do great. And it's not like boys will be better than girls, or girls will be better than boys. We can, if we work hard, we could be as good as each other. So basically, that's what I want to send the message. Yeah, part of the film is, you know.
Do you think is it still the case today that gender divide?
You know, I think some part of China is still the same case, but I think it's a little bit better than before. And well, you know, I can only say for myself in that sense. So when I was a kid, I faced that. Yeah.
And going back to the film, I found the editing of it absolutely beautiful. So
thank you.
It's kind of woven together. It's told in not linear at all, and we jump in time, seeing sort of fragments of each generation's life. I wondered, how did you choose which scenes you wanted to place after each other? And why did you want to tell this story in this almost mosaic form rather than a linear chronological narrative?
It's because it's not actually in the process of editing. I read my script in 2 weeks and I rewrite it for 21 times. And yeah, because we don't have much money to shoot it. So I write the script in the way that I'm gonna edit it. And you know that I don't have budget to hire an editor. So I have to do it myself, and I did a lot of work on the script.
You did all the editing yourself?
Yeah. And when I was writing the script, I write exactly the way that I'm going to edit it. And when I was rewriting the script, I already know which angle that's more or less I want to have it. So in the end, I saved a lot of time in editing because I really hate editing. And but I have no problem to write the script. So during the 21 times to rewrite the script, I structured it in such a way that I think it's, I got the idea of writing the script in such a way from the traditional Chinese writing skills. It's I don't know the English name term for that, but it's kind of like each paragraph have some similar meaning or interconnection with each other. And so this film, structure-wise, is have a different timeline. And inside of each timeline is non-linear, and there's also real or surreal image mixed together. So it's my inspiration is the traditional Chinese literature's piece. Yeah.
So when you did your first draft, did you do that chronologically and then you broke it up? Or did you always imagine it in fragments?
Always imagine it in fragments, because when I read it, and you know, this movie is a lot of the story, it's really happened. It's something related to me, some of the part. So I have been thinking on this script in the end of 2016, and but I didn't write it. I write the synopsis and everything. I tried to look for fundings, but I couldn't because I sent my synopsis around and nobody wanted to invest it. So in the end, I have to finance it myself, and with the help of my relatives and our friends and Jose's family. And so it's not much money, but our relatives and friends really helped. Yeah.
But the reasons for those difficulties in funding the nature, I mean, the homosexual content of the film, they were?
It's one of the biggest reasons is the topic. Is because LGBT issue is sensitive in China. and it's difficult to pass the censorship. Why pass the censorship? Because before the case is you have to send the full script, but not anymore. For the last few years, you just need to send your synopsis, and they say, okay, this is not a problem, and then you can shoot it. But I know if I write father's lover in my synopsis, it might not pass the censorship. So instead of, if I put father's boyfriend, for instance, like they will not pass it. But I said instead of father's boyfriend, I put father's lover. So it could be understood like it's a woman or it's a man. And then I passed the censorship.
Really?
Yeah, that's the trick I did. And because, my husband was saying, that he's my producer, he said, I think you can just write father's boyfriend. Maybe they will give you a pass. I said, you know what, you're from Europe, but I'm from a country that Winnie the Pooh is on the blacklist. And so, I don't know, I cannot take chances. I want to make this film. I need to have this permit to shoot. So in the end, I did the trick.
And so will you be able to screen it also in China?
Well, that I don't know. Yeah, because you have the permit to shoot doesn't mean that you will have the permit to screen it publicly in China. Yeah.
And I guess along the lines of that slight cultural difference that you're talking about between you and your husband, that's quite a big theme of the film. There seems to be a lot of aspects of the Chinese culture that is almost untranslatable, literally, in that there is this language block between her family and her husband. But also in terms of, she talks about going to gay parades in the US, and that's a totally different world than coming home to her family, where you can't even say the word gay.
Yeah, that part is based on my life experience, because I studied in the Americas. Some of my friends, they are gay and lesbian, and we go to the gay parade together. And because I really support them to be whoever they want to be, and for their real identity. But it's very sad that when my friends go back to China, they cannot openly be gay or lesbian, and they have to hide it somehow. Like between close friends, there's no problem, of course. But if I don't think they ever told their parents their true identity. There's so much pressures, and I understand why they hide it. But one of the goals of making this movie is to make people understand this a little bit more in China, and for people to be aware that the society is making progress, and we need to push things a little bit forward. And especially now, same-sex marriage is not legal in China yet. So I hope in future that the government will do some changing. Like maybe they will say, okay, let's pass the law of giving LGBT group their same rights with the rest. Yeah.
And what about that language barrier? Why did you choose to introduce that language barrier between the daughter and her husband?
Well, it's from my life experience as well, because my husband is Spanish. I constantly feel the barrier when we were living in China. The interaction between him and my parents is interesting. So I was thinking, okay, why not to put it there, because it creates a certain conflict, and because the husband represents a different culture that now is a little bit more open than the current Chinese society. But the Chinese society in the past, hundreds of years ago, there's no problem to be gay or lesbian, because we were more tolerate in the past than in now.
Why do you think that's changed then?
Well, different government, different dynasty, and so I think that there is evidence in poetries, in history books, in the old China, that people are actually very, very tolerant for LGBT group. Well, at that time there is no, T yet, and that there were, stories and poetries. It's about that people are very free to do whatever they want. Yeah.
And another barrier that we see in the film is this almost complete wall between the daughter and her parents in terms of their generation and their outlook towards marriage, towards sexuality. And there's especially that scene where the daughter's with her mum and she says, why don't you get a divorce or why don't you get a lover for yourself? And you can see there's these two different attitudes completely at odds with each other. There is no way that one generation can see from the perspective of the other generation.
Yeah.
Was that something you yourself had experienced, or do you think that the gap is even bridgeable at all?
I think in that case, it's not only me. I constantly heard stories from my friends that they feel that they could not connect with their parents. They could not make them understand each other. I think, how do I say it? The title, A Dog Barking at the Moon, is inspired by this painting of Jean Miro. And I don't know if you know the painting is like the moon was on the right upper corner, the dog was on the lower right corner, and on the left there's a ladder. So when I see this painting, I was like, okay, this is about you try to communicate, but you cannot reach to an understanding. And even if the dog tried to get up to the ladder and bark to the moon, and still they cannot understand each other. But you have to try to communicate. You have to try to try to communicate. Because once you give up, then it's gone, it's done, and you will never really reach to understanding between each other. It's like two generations, parents and the children. They need to try to understand each other. They need to let go a lot of pride, let go of ego, let go of, for example, you are my kids, you have to be obedient to me. And those things, okay, it is 2019, let's sit down and talk about it, and let's be equal. And forget about that you're my parents, forget about that I'm your kids. Let's talk honestly as friends.
But even though they're coming from very different viewpoints, I did actually think it was interesting that the conversations were still somehow quite open. I mean, the daughter does still address the fact very openly that her dad is gay, and she says that to her mum. You know, like, your husband is gay, go and get a lover, essentially.
Yeah.
And I wondered, how common would it be for someone to actually openly address the homosexuality of a parent in China?
Sorry, I didn't get the question really.
So, how common would it be for a child to openly address the fact that their parent is gay in China?
Well, I think that's the case in the film, but I don't know whether if it's the case in the rest of the society. I think different families face different issues, and different families come from different backgrounds. Not every kid from such a family could openly talk about it to their parents. And in this case, Xiao Yu, she's studied in America before, so she's more like she doesn't have much burden when she talked to her mother in that sense, I think. And also that her setting in the movie is a writer, so that makes a lot of difference, I think. It's not, I don't think it's the case in the rest of the Chinese society. And most of the kids in her situation, I don't know what are they gonna do.
I noticed that the camera kind of shies away from the male characters quite a lot. So the dad, we very rarely see close-up shots of his face, and often the camera is only focusing on the daughter when they're talking together. And similarly with the husband, there's a few more shots of the husband, but it's still quite distant. Why did you want the camera to be quite distant from those male characters?
Because the story was mostly focused on the relationship between the mother and the daughter. And it's not saying, it's not because the husband and the father is insignificant, but I just feel there's no need to show much more. I don't know how to explain it, yeah.
Okay. And I also wanted to talk a bit about the idea of marriage and the role of marriage, especially for this older generation, because the mother, even though she seems to be fairly aware of the fact that she has feelings for other women as a younger woman, is totally fixated on this idea of I have to get married. That's the expectation of me. That's what I'll do regardless of what I feel. Is that just something of the older generation? And what impact does it have on the next generations to come if marriages are formed on that sort of false belief?
Well, it's a very hard topic, and I think in the 80s and in the 90s, it is very important for you to have a family, and now it's not the case anymore. A lot of young people is living in a more free environment. That they think they don't have to be married to be happy, but in the past, in the 80s, in the 90s, people believe that okay, when I'm 25 or when I'm 30, I have to be married, have kids. So that's what your parents will want you to do, or what your colleagues or friends think that you should do. It's like, hey, somebody is not getting married when she's or he is 32. There must be some problem of him or her, and that's the society at that time. But nowadays it's different. You could be single no matter how old you are. But still, there's part of the society still hoping that their family to be a little bit more traditional, like you have to marry in a certain age, especially now is the Chinese New Year. And if you are working in another city, being single, and if you are, like for instance, if you are 30 years old, when you go back visit your parents or your grandparents, they will ask about your private life. They will ask the question of why don't you have a boyfriend or girlfriend? Why don't you get married? I want my grandkids, and things like that. You will face pressure. Not how do I put it? Most of the people face pressure. Yeah. But
And what about the marriage between the daughter and her husband? Because at times it seems like a really beautiful relationship, and at times she seems very melancholy or dissatisfied in some way. Is that to do with the marriage at all?
I think the marriage between the daughter and the husband is a happy marriage, but when she's feeling really, really sad, I think it's because she was paying very much attention to her mother and her father's relationship, because she thinks they should just go with whoever they love, but the father and the mother are so obsessed with the concept of being respected by the people surrounding them. So they have to have a traditional marriage, and they have to be exemplified citizens somehow, like have a good job, have a good family with kids, and no affairs, no marriage, no scandals, like no marriage affairs, no affairs outside of the marriage, no scandals. So otherwise, they believe they will lose the respect. So the daughter feels sorry for the parents that they're living in such a their own world that they couldn't see outside of their circle.
Yeah. And there's obviously this cult that the mother becomes a part of or turns to as what she sees as a cure for her husband's behaviour and deep down her own sexual feelings. Is that based on something? Where was the inspiration for that cult?
Yes, sadly my mother belonged to a cult, and she put me in a cult when I was around 9 or 10 years old. And then the government put an end to the cult. They say this is cult, we've forbidden it in China. And so she take me out of the cult. But now, since 2014, she's in another new cult. I have been trying to tell her, okay, this is ridiculous, and this is manipulating, brainwashing, and I think you should think about it and maybe drop that off. But she just refused to hear me. And also, this code is, how do I put it? They are not only taking the adult, they're also taking teenagers And when I was 10, I was in a different code, and I know how bad they are.
Yeah.
So when I know that they are brainwashing young kids, me myself, I went to the police. I said, okay, you guys should do something, because this group of people, they're not only brainwashing the adult, they're brainwashing kids. Because I was in the code when I was a kid. I feel for this kid, and they cannot choose for themselves because it's the parents putting them there. And also there's a lot of parents, they are not from the code, but they believe, okay, this is summer camp, or this is a group that you can leave your children there, just do Chinese calligraphy and do paintings. But they don't know, while they're doing the other the activities, they're sending them different messages, the idea of code. And in the end, they're doing something really bad for the kids. And I don't care about the adults who's being in the code, because they are grown up. They should make decisions for themselves. But the kids, they don't know.
Yeah.
And I was one of those, and I was one of them. And I don't know whether if it's a code, whether it's a religion, whether it's a group that you just dance together. But hey, and there's somebody, and the parents should be aware of this. The government should be aware of this. You cannot letting evil people just taking control of young kids. That's just wrong. But sadly, after I report to the police, I didn't get an answer, really.
So you don't know if anything happened?
Well, I go to the police, I report about this, and they said, okay, we're going to look into it, but it's not really our department to handle this. And they said, okay, we're going to call you back if we know more information. And the next time they called me, and I went to the police station with my husband, and the police says, okay, you know what, your husband cannot come in. I said, why not? He was with me the last time. And he said, okay, no, you cannot come in with him. And I said, I don't know, I don't understand why. He said, please don't let him in. I said, okay. So I went with the police. We went into this small room, and it was like October, and outside is very hot, but inside they put the AC at 16 degrees, and I just, I was weak because I gave birth to my first daughter in December, and it was in August, but I still kind of feel I didn't recover. Yeah. They told me to sit right under the AC with 16 degrees, and I was shivering. And they asked me the question about the code. They asked me the question about what do I do and what do my husband do. And one of them even say, oh, how is the economic situation in Spain right now? And I was like, oh, it's all right. But that topic, we talk about it, me and my husband, in our apartment. We talk about economic situation in Spain. So I don't understand why he asked me that question. So have you been listening to me? Or have you checked me up after I report to the police? Why do you do that to me? And I am reporting to you about the code. But
and then it feels almost like you're under interrogation.
Yeah, and you are not checking the code, but instead you're checking about me. I don't understand.
Yeah.
So it's so sad.
If you don't mind me asking, did your mum turn to the cult for the same reasons as the mother in the film turns to the cult? So because of ideas of sexual perversion, so to speak?
I don't think that is a similar case. But even if it's a similar case, it's up to my parents to answer the question. Yeah. So it's not exactly the same, I think. Yeah.
Okay. And as it sounds of it, this film is then hugely based on things that have happened to you and very personal experiences and your relationships. How did you find converting them into a cinematic work?
It's hard emotionally. After I write the first script, and I feel depressed, and I was living in Beijing with my husband and my daughter, and I said, okay, I need to travel a little bit by myself. I always want to go to Tibet and Xinjiang. I said, could you please give me some time? And he said, no problem. And he took our daughter to Spain for 3 weeks. And I went by myself to Tibet and Xinjiang. I just want to get a little bit distance from the script, because it is true that a lot of things happening in the script happened to me. And especially it triggered my memory when I was in the cold with my mother. And it's very depressing. But after the 3 weeks in Tibet and Xinjiang, I feel way better. So I come back, and my husband and my daughter come back from Spain, and I started to write and rewrite and rewrite. I did a lot of work on the script. So in the end, is a great help when we were shooting the script, because when we're shooting the movie, because we only shoot in 18 days, and we take 2 half days off, and we try to manage almost every day within 12 hours. There's 1 or 2 days that we have to travel from south of Beijing to the north. It takes like 2 or 3 hours, so that's why we pass the 12 hours. But some days we shoot 6 hours and 8 hours, and people are saying, oh my God, it's like, we never seen such a set in the Chinese filmmaking world before. And most of the people, in other crew, they work more than 12 hours, more than 16 hours. It's normal, but I feel that I have to treat people well to make a good film. And also that I cannot shoot 18 hours a day or 16 hours a day, because I was 4 months pregnant when I was shooting.
While you were directing?
Yeah, I was directing, and I was 4 months pregnant. And so I said, you know what, I don't want to pass the 12 hours. And even if you can, I can't. And my line producer was saying that you only shoot 6 hours and you can do more coverage from the other angle. I said, you know what, I don't think I need the other angle. I already thought about it when I was writing the script, and I talked with my cinematographer, so I really don't need extra angle. And they said, but are you going to have enough material in the editing room? I said, yes, I'm already have enough material, and I don't need extra angles. Just let people go and enjoy themselves. And there are people feel very happy, and they have time. They go to have a haircut after shooting. And my makeup artist went to celebrate the Chinese Dragon Boat Festival, and they make this traditional food with their family. That traditional food was in the movie as well. It's like they are wrapping the leaves, and that was one of the day when we were shooting is a festival, so people want to party in the half-day break. So everybody was happy, and I'm very grateful for my team and my actors and actors, because they're charging me very, very little money.
Are they all professional?
Yes, most of them, they are professional. Some of them, they are my friends. And I'm very grateful, because people like the script, they love the story, and they want to make it happen, so they don't care about money. And they do it for little money, and I'm very glad. Yeah.
I just finally wanted to ask, have you shown the film to your family or people at home, and what was their response if you have?
Not yet. I didn't show them yet. But there's a clip that was on the internet. It's a dinner scene when they just arrived home after the parents pick up them up in the airport. My mom watched that clip, and she's very upset about it. And because part of it is based on something really happened. So I think if she watched the whole movie, then she might cut relationship with me, because I touch a lot of things about the code, and she's really believe in the code, and she's a strong believer. So I think maybe she won't like it at all.
I mean, it's a hugely brave film to make, and like I say, I absolutely loved it. Thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, good luck with your premiere, and have a lovely rest of the time at the Berlinale.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.